Hello, my name is Melva Covington. I am the co-founder and managing director of People Empowering People for Inclusion Now. We call that PEPIN. I, along with my co-founder, Tamara Allen, who is the Chief Visionary Marketing Officer, we're honored to welcome you to our Flash Talk series hosted by Ms. Mabel Hung. PEPIN is a Chicago-based African-American female-owned research, recruitment, and technology firm focused on delivering high-tech and high-touch solutions for clinical research, focused on reducing health disparities, improving inclusion, and achieving health equity. There is an exclamation point in the center of our name because it expresses a sense of urgency in addressing the issues of inclusion as well as reducing disparate outcomes. Our value proposition is simple and straightforward. We aim to do three things. The first is to increase inclusion in clinical research. The second is provide evidence and insight that's scaled by digital technologies. And the third is to leverage community-based input and engagement to achieve solutions for research participation, health policy, and better access to innovative care. We do this by building empowered networks, empowered study partners, and empowered data systems in the work that we produce. Now for today, we aim to bring you insight from an innovative leader to discuss their work in science, digital innovation, or healthcare solutions. So we welcome you to sit back, take some time to breathe, and enjoy our Flash Talk. We appreciate you, and we thank you very much.
Okay, so hey everyone, welcome to the Pepin Flash Talk series. My name is Mabel and I'm a marketing intern at Pepin. I'm just super excited to be here every time to be able to share some really diverse perspectives and inspire conversations with you and really to help you stay informed on topics that truly matters. So today we are joined by Dr. Anderson, who is a board advisor to Pepin. She has played a key role in advancing our initiatives and driving meaningful progress within the firm. And to start off, I will just quickly introduce her as well. So Dr. Cheryl Anderson is the founder and CEO of ACE Regulatory Affairs Consulting. She brings over 25 years of experience in pharmaceutical, biopharma, and biotech regulatory affairs. Her career spans leadership roles at major organizations like Pfizer, Eli Lilly, and Upsher Smith Laboratories, where she drove regulatory strategies, submissions, and innovative product development. She also has a passion for addressing unmet medical needs, where she focuses on early stage biopharma innovation, and particularly in CNS, oncology, and rare diseases. And additionally, she's also a passionate advocate for STEM education and diversity in clinical trials. And she holds a degree in degrees in pharmacy, biomedical sciences, and an MBA in pharmaceutical marketing. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Anderson. So happy to have you here with us today.
Thank you, Mabel. I'm excited to spend this time with you and Pepin on this Flash Talk. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Yeah, so start things off. We'll just have you introduce your journey and something unique about you that you want the audience to know.
Yeah, thanks. I would just say that right now the real focus for me is around ACE Regulatory Affairs Consulting, and you'll hear me just refer to it as ACE. I'm the founder of that, and I'm based in Texas, specializing in helping small to mid-sized pharma and biotech companies. The thing that I really endeavor to do with the client is to help in crafting regulatory strategies that are grounded in the sponsor's clinical development plan, target product profile, regulatory health authority engagement, leveraging current regulatory intelligence, policies, and commercial considerations to streamline the time to market. It's really important to help and work with CEOs and founders as they navigate through regulatory safety and quality compliance for both during development as well as when their products are marketed. So maybe you've done a nice summary and kindly described my background over 25 plus years. It has also included university faculty roles where I was co-investigator for clinical trials for schizophrenia alongside a multidisciplinary research team. When I transitioned to pharma, as you've mentioned, I moved into regulatory affairs. And this was also important around establishing both experience and skills in the US based and international companies and establishing US operations for these global companies. So as my leadership responsibilities grew, I earned my MBA in pharmaceutical and healthcare marketing. And before founding ACE, I led global regulatory affairs, drug safety, and quality functions. So that's the background on the professional side. And just for kicks, it's sometimes cool to know that when I was an undergrad student, I was a uh, cage cleaner for a lion named Delilah.
Wow, that is super cool to hear. Yeah, those are definitely very incredible experiences. I'm sure your work has definitely been instrumental in helping, some of these firms navigate the complexities of the regulatory landscape, including Pepin as well. And as an intern, I've definitely seen, the struggles of, the co-founders constantly talking about different regulatory challenges that they have to overcome, and working with you to kind of drive initiatives forward. So would love if you can talk a little bit more about your role as an advisor at Pepin as well.
So thank you again. As a strategic advisor to Pepin, the first thing I tend to do is want to understand what the company's business objectives and values are. And after meeting with Dr. Covington and Ms. Allen, it was just really impressive to me to see the direction that the company was going. Looking at these objectives, improve access of underrepresented and historically marginalized patients, really trying to create a workplace culture that demonstrates respect for diverse people, thoughts, and perspectives. Leveraging community-based and partnerships that include patients at the center of that. And most important, enabling strategic and operational decisions with evidence-based research and the technology that is used by Pepin. I find that Pepin is really intentional in driving innovation to transform clinical trials and to do all of that in a reasonable way that gets patients involved. In my case, Pepin relies on ACE as an advisor on new product development, regulations, operational excellence that even has to focus on the data management that's going to be required for the sponsors that they support. Building collaborative relationships with the FDA on the topics that are important on how is it that we make clinical trials much more representative of the intended patient population. And particularly, the regulatory environment is changing so quick.
Yes.
And every day there's something new. There's a change, there's a change in organizational structure. All kinds of things are also happening. So it's really, really important to try to keep a good pace on what that means. But I think the one thing that as sponsors think about moving into new product development is to really understand that the clinical trial transformation initiative at the FDA is very, very specific and they're very committed to that. The guidances that are published describe the current thinking on decentralized clinical trials, digital health technology, generative AI, just many, many topics that are relevant to what are the things that are going to be enabling to have the trials be much more relevant for the purpose of developing effective drugs that are safe in the majority of the populations that are intended to receive the product. So that's about it. What I would say why my role it has been invited to be a part of Pepin, and I gladly accepted that.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear. And I think Pepin right now is definitely in both a very exciting and complex space where so much is always happening every day. And Pepin is always all about, being intentional and being purposeful. So I think your work really helps to drive that as well. And I know you are, also a passionate advocate for increasing underrepresented groups in clinical trials. And just wondering if there's any strategies you've find very effective and how can sort of patients be better supported throughout that process.
Right. The this idea of increasing representation, it's just good science. It's good for healthcare. It's good for just so many things, just on a larger scale, to have that data actually representative, and to most importantly ensure that the effectiveness and safety in those populations are significant enough, right? And so, but with that comes a considerable change that is important. And is it change, or is it being very intentional and purposeful? I think that those are the kinds of things that are relevant. When I think about the regulatory environment, they began publishing guidances on how to strengthen diversity in clinical trials 10 years ago. And then even more recently, I would say that was 3 to 4 years ago, they also published specific guidelines on diversity and action plans. And then in June of this year, there was a reissuance of another version of the draft guidance document that really described the diversity action plans. In this case, the FDA is outlining what are its expectations, what are the areas of focus, including race and ethnicity, gender, age, geographic distribution of patient, all of these very, very important things to help those patients that might not otherwise be able to participate in clinical trials. And I think the other aspect of what they're doing is that these strategies are very, very comprehensive, if you will. And so the expectation that sponsors will present their diversity action plans at the end of phase 2 is critically important. And how then do you get that to happen? It's not something that you wake up overnight and decide, oh, I've been doing this to recruit patients, and I can just continue to do that and achieve a different outcome. That's called insanity. And so, no, there are a lot of things that have to be done differently. And so then the piece of advice that I try to convey is that as early as possible, especially within and during phase 2 of clinical trials, that those plans around what you're going to be doing to both characterize the intended population and then the strategies to get that intended population. And think about the fact that there are much more studies and clinical trial designs around rare diseases. So in addition to all of the other factors that are obvious, in those smaller populations where they exist in places within the United States that might be very remote, not close to medical centers, or you're having to rely on global locations for your clinical trials. So all of these are the areas that to think about. And my advice is really to think about that as early as possible and reasonable, especially once you have a sense that you do have a plausible product that you'll be able to advance.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense and very insightful as well. I think it's clear that some of these barriers needs to be addressed on multiple levels. And Pepin is really trying to kind of center, some of these things like including the diversity plan and just being patient-centric and making sure that patients are involved at each of the planning stages of the clinical trial process. And then speaking more on clinical trials as well, what's one aspect of the regulatory landscape that kind of directly impacts patients participating in clinical trials, and what are some of the initiatives that Pepin has currently to address this?
Yeah. Well, I go back to the diversity action plans, right?
Yes.
That is a direct patient impact kind of discussion and planning. What I would just say is that this really is a paradigm shift of both perceived and real risks to clinical development programs. And so it is not to be taken lightly that this refocus and efforts to do that don't have significant impact. And the other parts that at least has been clearly articulated by the FDA and other authorities is that the evidentiary standards for safety and effectiveness have not been lowered and are not being lowered for this work. And so then it's going to be a collective that's going to be involved in needing to make these differences. And groups like Pepin are there to help the clients be able to kind of figure those things out. As I mentioned before, one of the things that was a real driver for me to connect with Pepin, as well as being involved with the team, the leadership team, is that it's really, really important for Pepin to understand the research and evidence-based decisions around patient decisions. It was a pleasure to to participate in one of Pepin's first publications that was in the DIA, Drug Information Association, one of their publications. I think that as we also look at these initiatives that that Pepin is endeavoring, there's really an opportunity to connect with all partners for sure. But the one partner being the FDA, the Oncology Center of Excellence is one example of where agencies are working very diligently to look at what things can be done to better impact access to clinical trials. And looking at inclusion and exclusion eligibility criteria, that is key and central. And so I think as Pepin comes close to that topic and working with partners and the agency and understanding the level of information that's going to be required to understand the development of that product, then I think that is one of the critical places and initiatives that Pepin holds dear and enabled by AI. And so I think that technology is really going to help advance the field.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think Pepin definitely values, some of its key partners and the people that it's working with, including you as well, to help drive some of these initiatives forward as fast as we can. With that, again, exclamation mark in the Pepin name, that sense of urgency. So yeah, that's awesome. And then kind of just switching gears a little bit, kind of speaking to more of your experience as a consultant, what do you think would be the top 2 recommendations you would give to biotech firms to help them achieve inclusion goals in the clinical trial process?
Well, I think this is a great question, Mabel, and of course, there could be a lot of things that could be
Yes.
brought forward. But when I really, really reflect on it, right, at the end of the day, where is leadership on making the representation in the clinical trials and development? Where's the leadership as it pertains to defining and achieving inclusion goals for the products that are in development? Well, I believe that the leadership has to set the pace, and that setting that pace means that as a company, as a development team, you're expecting things to be intentional. You're setting clear expectations. You're going to inspect what you expect, as well as you're going to inspire to what the importance of this work. So leadership, that's the first thing, and that's always an important conversation I like to have in the beginning, is to understand where companies' leadership is thinking about. I think then the next area, again, there are many areas, but the one that I'm just kind of honing in for our conversation is around, the DAPS, Diversity Action Plan, and the inclusion goals that have to be set. When you think about all of the sectors that integrate to be able to move this question forward, it's about product-specific evidence generation, right? You really have to understand the history of the disease distribution of patients and the like. It's health literacy, so that consumers and patients are able to both access the information on health as well as participating in clinical trials. It's the policies that are being released by government agencies, and it certainly is about access and partnership. This partnership is with medical facilities and healthcare settings, investigators, FDA, CROs, patient groups. And so all of these groups must work together. And last but not least, what is the extent to which a company is investing in this effort? And that's both the resources and the dollars to be able to do this important work. It does have an important aspect and hit on sometimes cost and time, but those are the kinds of things that over time, I think that the industry will begin to collect much more data that provides more solutions, perhaps more infrastructure that can help, and other means to be able to basically support the costs that are going into that. So those are the 2 things that come to mind.
Yeah.
Inclusion, go, be intentional.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you for sharing, your knowledge on that. It's definitely great to hear from your perspective, especially with your experience in consulting. And I think what are all those things that you just said are definitely very key pieces of the inclusion puzzle at a lot of these firms. And I think something else I also wanted to touch upon is digital health technologies, and how can that also support, to reduce some of these participation barriers, and as well tying that back to Pepin, how is Pepin using these technologies to promote inclusivity at different stages of the
Mhm.
patient journey?
Another 1 minute answer for a big, big, big topic. When you think about it, the decentralized clinical trials, what is really the purpose in that? Is it new? It's not. It's not new. This work has been going on for decades almost, in some level or another. But now that we have coined the term, we're also integrating digital health technology. It's an opportunity to move the clinical trial operations closer, air quotes, to the patients. And by so doing, we're increasing the probability of patients participating in these clinical trials, right? So just think about that. What if assessments could be done in your home? Community clinics or community pharmacies, regional medical hospitals, instead of having to go to the major facilities, and you're able to rely on the technology to do that. Sponsors design trials to enable assessments with virtual visits, iPhones for data entry, traveling healthcare professionals, and then the health technology itself that may be contributing data to the endpoints that are going to be measures of safety and effectiveness, or to data related to outcomes research that will be needed by the assessment and the reimbursement community to really understand what is the value of the new technology. So, these factors, they lower the barriers and all, but the real challenge is that one size does not fit all. For example, providing the technology, who's going to do that? Mostly the sponsors are going to have to provide those iPhones. Well, what if the patient says, I really like my iPhone, can I just use this one? So then you have this mix of things, and a lot of questions around the execution, right? What if Wi-Fi is a necessity in these remote geographic areas? Personnel that are interacting, do they have the right cultural competency to be able to interact with the intended patient population? That could be culture as well as language, right? And so I think Pepin's research is really critical to being able to help sponsors develop these pathways to patients, and then to be able to actually show the data around how their solutions are helpful and meaningful, because they're driven by science, they're driven by appropriate interpretations, and then moving. And when you think about this, there's just the CROs have been doing a very, very important job with trying to recruit patients that are representative of the population. But I think when we start to actually invest more and leverage these decentralized clinical trials, that's really going to be a game changer. And it's really an exciting time in new
Mhm.
product development. And so I'm excited to be a part of this, not only with Pepin, but with other organizations as well.
No, yeah, I think that's very well said. And especially with technology these days, we think it's so powerful that we can just kind of put it out there and let it, solve all the problems. But I think it's really important that you brought up how, that there are these pathways and how things has to be backed up by research and data to be able to drive more effective strategies for some of these firms. So, yeah. Well said. And that wraps up our last question for today. So, yeah, Dr. Anderson, thank you so much for joining us today. You brought great insights to both, some of the really crucial topics in the space today, as well as to speaking to some of Pepin's exciting initiatives that are currently ongoing. So, thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And yeah, for the audiences out there, thank you again for joining us once again. And we really hope that this conversation has provided valuable insights and inspiration as well. So be sure to follow us on LinkedIn for updates on future events, more Flash Talks to come, and exciting opportunities to be able to learn and grow with the Pepin community. And yeah, thank you so much. And we look forward to seeing you again very, very soon.